This is Platemark. My name is Ann Schaefer, and I am your host. This is Series 3 of Platemark, in which I am interviewing colorful characters who occupy various roles in the print ecosystem. And of course, our go-to is the artists, because nothing happens without the artists, right? Today's guest is Karen Kunc. She is a printmaker and retired professor from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. She has a studio in downtown Lincoln now called Constellation Studios, where she does a whole bunch of stuff, including papermaking and letterpress. I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot. We talk about all kinds of things, including how she's pushing the boundaries of woodcut. I mean, just incredible layering and stenciling and reduction, and there's a lot going on. So I hope you enjoy it. All right, let's see. I identify as a cis-het white woman, and I use the pronouns she, her. I record Platemark in Baltimore, Maryland, the land of the Piscataway Conoy people. If you value the content that I'm producing here at Platemark, do me a favor and become a monthly supporter. Head over to platemarkpodcast.com and hit the support and donate button. Your assistance would be most helpful. It's just me doing this. All right, let's get rolling. Karen, it's so wonderful to see you this morning. Thank you so much for coming on Platemark.
Thank you, Anne. I'm really honored to have the opportunity to talk with you.
Yay! Yeah, it's you've been on my list for a while, so I'm glad we got a chance to do this. Before we go too far, though, can you introduce yourself for our listeners?
I'm Karen Kunc in Lincoln, Nebraska, and I'm in Constellation Studios, which is my studio and community print center.
Oh, that's cool. So have you retired from your teaching position?
Yeah, 4 years ago, I've been retired after many years of teaching from the University of Nebraska, Lincoln. But I still have good relationships there. My colleagues are there. Student population keeps changing.
Oh, right. Yes, you no longer know the kids, right? That's right. How long did you teach there?
37 years.
Oh my gosh, wow. That's a long time. Yeah. I mean, it's, nothing. You're a spring chicken. So when you were teaching, how many faculty were there at Lincoln, or are there?
I usually say it was about 22 studio faculty and 5 art historians, and it could be increased in the number since I've retired. It was a middle-sized department, a good middle, not too small, not too big.
I don't know, 22 sounds like a lot. But how many in printmaking? Were you the relief person only, or did you have to teach everything?
I was a generalist. I could teach everything. I have a colleague, Francisco Suto, who has taught printmaking with me for about 20 years. Now he's the director of the school, so he's not really involved in actually teaching the undergraduates. And they hired a replacement for me, so I'm thrilled about that. That the printmaking program is in good hands with Sophie Isaac, and the program continues, and it's really a one-person job now that she's doing it, but there's a lot to do.
When people are looking for schools, and I don't know the answer to this, when people are looking at schools, would they say, Lincoln, its strength is X, Y, and Z, its program is shaped like this, and, Iowa's is this, and whatever else? I mean, is that how would you describe the program there?
I'm not sure I know. The program.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I actually think we've always had a really strong, active faculty. Everyone is productive and supportive of each other. Our MFA program has been really strong. It's small compared to some of these other schools, but we always had great students from all over the place. And I've had such a good run of students that I feel like my family that are out there all doing their things. The graduate students especially, you have close relationships with.
Yeah, I think small is okay in an MFA program. I mean, that sounds ideal, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very supportive.
All right, well, so where did you grow up?
I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. So I'm a native Nebraskan. I'm still here. I never thought I'd be here for the rest of my life, but that's how it's turning out. I did go away when I went to graduate school. I went east to Ohio. And I was in Columbus, Ohio for about 9 years. and then I came back
Oh,
to
wow.
Nebraska.
Nice. Yeah. Ohio. I went to college in Ohio myself, not to Columbus, but a smaller school.
Yeah.
It was really great for the education part, but I confess I came back to the East Coast when I was done. Something about home, you know?
Yes, that's exactly it. I loved Ohio. Columbus was great. The accessibility to the East Coast was close, but I have family here yet, and I missed the open space. I needed to get away from the claustrophobic feeling of all those trees and windy roads. And, here you can see where you're going.
Oh my God. To me, Ohio is wide open. That's hilarious. And when you were growing up, I have not been to either Lincoln or Omaha. They sound like they must be ideal Midwestern Americans. Well, almost West. But when you were little, when did you figure out you were an artist?
Oh, I knew I was an artist before kindergarten. It just was the thing I always wanted to do. Everybody else wanted to play games. I wanted to color. So I remember sitting on the front porch coloring and choosing that, and knowing in kindergarten that I was the best artist. I probably wasn't, but even some of those drawings I did in kindergarten still resonate in my mind, thinking I was being very innovative.
Oh, wow. Is that right? You weren't just coloring within the lines. You were actually making things.
Yeah. And even being aware of things teachers would say, like, oh, pink and green cannot go together. But I liked that anyway, and I did it anyway. And getting in trouble for coloring instead of doing...
They missed the whole, right? They missed the whole preppy phase of pink and green.
Yeah.
Of course they go together.
Oh, the simultaneous contrast of complementary colors.
Right. Oh my gosh. So when did Prince come into your life?
Well, in high school, actually, I took all 4 years of art in high school, and we did a semester for printmaking. So I did a screen print and a woodcut and a linoleum block, and liked that at the time. And it was so interesting and kind of different and challenging. So when I got to the university, I wanted to get into printmaking as soon as I could. So as a sophomore, I was able to get into my first beginning printmaking class. And
wow,
I kept going.
Right. You're one of two people, I think, that I've talked to who actually had the opportunity in high school to start and play. Gosh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It says a lot for the Omaha school system.
Yeah. Well, there's so much to learn, and there's always a conceptual challenge tied to the process challenge. Suits my hand.
More so than other media?
Well, I did an equal amount of painting, equal amount of ceramics, and I decided to choose only one technical area, and that was printmaking. Okay. And painting, everybody's a painter, and brushstrokes look the same. So it didn't look in any unique way for my painting. But in printmaking, my marks always looked interesting and unique. So that actually got much more attention than any painting.
Were you doing the mokuhanga style of woodcuts even back then?
Oh, no. And
no.
We didn't even know about those and understand that. Mokuhanga has had great interest in recent times. And it probably always have, because artists would make pilgrimages to Japan to go learn from a master. And I don't do very much mokuhanga, actually. A lot of people think my woodblock prints are done in the mokuhanga style. No, they're oil-based block prints.
Oh. Yeah. I feel like I saw I feel like I saw the pictures I did see of you teaching seminars and things, that it was mokuhanga, but maybe I'm wrong. We need to know about the conceptual rigor of your work, but we also need to know the technical parts, because I was confused.
Well, everyone is confused. And I have my conceptual in both areas, because there's qualities about the Japanese block prints that I emulate done in the Western way. So I always say I'm a bridge between the technical means and the visual qualities of both processes. It really comes together in my work. So I'm really centered right in the middle of these two influences. But I do oil-based reduction wood block prints. I carve and print and destroy the block as I'm going. And I'm applying the ink with rollers onto the wood block, often through paper stencils, so that I can do color separations or selective inking. And it gives me great range of color possibilities instead of following the tradition of straight reduction printing. Straight reduction printing,
Okay.
people are always putting that first color underneath everything, and then that affects all the colors after. So if I can put as many colors as I can against the white of the paper, then I start with a real colorful base, and then I start doing more reduction and more selective inking and more complexities and more evolution.
My head hurts. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, so let's go back to step one. So let's run through the steps of creating one of your very complicated, obviously, woodcuts, because I think it's the stencil part that's probably the linchpin that I'm not quite catching.
Right, and it's just a handy device to help make selective areas, because I can isolate certain shapes, and it almost makes sense to print a small thing first, get it inked, carve it away. Then you have big areas to deal with, and it's much easier to ink up even without a stencil after you start. So that kind of challenge of thinking of where to place these little jewel gems of color at the beginning, small areas that stay clean, that stay bright, that don't have layers on top of them. And so...
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
So... Oh my God. Ding. So you're almost working backwards.
Sort of, and working forward at the same time and working in an evolutionary way. My only plan is a strong composition, a strong design in black and white. No color sketches, no planning, no staging. I don't like to do that. That kind of
You're composing on the block?
I have and you can see behind me, here's a drawing of a very strong composition that was traced onto the wood block, and it helped lay where areas would be. So I stuck with that. But you can't plan every carving mark you're going to make. I can't plan and don't want to plan all the colors ahead of time. So if I put a few colors down, then it helps me respond to what the next colors will be. And then I respond to how the carving is going to be. It's for me, it's a magic, but a challenge. It keeps it fresh.
Absolutely.
I am working towards the reduction, finding the last few layers, maybe even a key block that goes on top. But on the way to making a key block, I find too many opportunities to put more colors on. So I rarely even ink up the whole block. So it doesn't have a key block at the end.
But if it did, it would still be the same block you've been cutting away the whole time. You would end up with just minimal raised parts that would get inked up, right. And it would act as, wow. Oh my God, my head hurts.
Yeah, but it gives so many possibilities, and it leaves such beautiful impact of the ink on the paper, and I don't have it build up too heavy. I may do 12 runs on the print, but there's never 12 layers of ink. So the ink has a quality that sits on the paper because I'm patching it out in all these different areas. It might take 2 or 3 or 4 layers for me to feel satisfied. 12 would be too many, but 12 runs may need to be done because I'm building that interest and resolution over the whole surface.
Are there parts where colors are overlapping?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. And you can see the reduction quality of things stacking up and going down, and you can see them in registration and overlap at times, unusual colors that overlap. That can be really fun too. So it has stayed very creative for me all this time.
Well, you're like you're improving on a block. It's insane.
Yeah, having a very strong base, like a key song that everybody knows, and then it ends up taking me in all these other directions and interesting solutions and problems along the way. And then I have to solve it. And even that's more interesting than having it predictable.
And the problems are compositional or color, or what do you run into?
Making ugly, stupid decisions and then having to fix it.
Wait, how do you fix it if it's already done and you've carved it away?
Yeah, and the colors on the paper and the addition, I'm additioning as I go. So then I have to find another solution. And sometimes that's what really stretches me, to find out what color is going to go with this crazy decision I made 2 weeks ago. And if I need another block, of course I can go to another block. It's only wood. So I can keep adding if I needed to.
So you don't limit yourself to a single block. If you need to move, okay.
Right.
Well, and how often does that happen?
Often, yeah. And actually nowadays, here's another wrinkle. Nowadays, I'm usually using 2 wood blocks that are both reduced at the same time. And they're kind of carved like a negative and a positive. So there's wood everywhere to have available to use. So that makes it even more of a interesting puzzle, because technically I haven't cut anything away. It's on one block.
I don't even know. Right. I don't even know how you do that. How do you, stop. Hold on, back up. You're carving 2 blocks that mirror each other at the same time, basically?
Not mirror. Mirroring would be opposite. They're aligned.
Oh, right. Sorry.
Yeah, they're aligned. And I have registration marks that match them up. I use a tracing paper to go back and forth to make sure the registration's going to work. And then I have lots of shortcuts for carving, even areas that are supposed to stay white and be gone. I don't always carve them away. So there's lots of
Is that where the stencil comes in?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just keep it clean.
Right.
Don't put ink on it.
Right.
That's kind of what's happened up there.
Right.
It stayed, but then it allowed me to flow a color stain across it.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Wait, so is there hand coloring at the end?
No.
Ever?
No. Maybe I have to fix a little spot because of wood chipped out of that place. That's about it. I don't hand color. I get all these nuances and blendings from the roller, from my hand manipulation of the ink on the surface of the wood. I can blend out and make feathery edges. So that's emulating the Japanese mokuhanga approach, because I'm getting these soft transitions between ink, fully inked, barely any ink, the white of the paper. And, in mokuhanga, that's called bukashi, those kind of gradation blends. So I'm emulating that in the Western way. And then if I do mokuhanga, yes, you can do it in the mokuhanga approach. I'm not very good at it. I like doing it, but I can't make a print like this. Myself, I can't make a print like that.
Oh, gosh. So this feathering, this is probably where I saw you with stencils and your fingers. Right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. Little tappings, blendings, karate chopping, all kinds of manipulating of the ink on the surface of the wood before it's printed.
Well, I think people think of woodcut as on or off. You've got the ink or you don't, and
right.
Going to the subtlety of gradation is a little counterintuitive for folks, I bet.
Right. So there's lots of qualities about woodblock that can be examined and turned over just like a worry stone, and kind of figure out what to do, what's different. I always say I've subverted some of the limitations of reduction woodcut. I've expanded it And that's what's so fascinating, still fascinating to me.
Wow. And how long have you been working in this mode?
Oh, quite a number of years. My first teaching job after graduate school was to teach relief printmaking, but I didn't tell them I hadn't done a relief print since high school. So along with all the students, I dived into it and did all the assignments and learned about the process one step ahead of the students. And in doing that,
Gosh.
then I
Oh, no.
really learned a lot of the possibilities, and I liked it. You could make a great big mark like this, as big as a wood block. And so I kept going, and which is typically what happens to artists after graduate school. You kind of have to find your own way. 5 years after school, then, suddenly things started happening in this woodblock method. And I've continued to develop it and find new things to do, and my work has evolved, but I think it always looks like mine.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I agree. But
Yeah.
I feel like I'm going to guess you have one of those brains that's always searching. And I feel like you've pushed the boundaries of woodcut probably farther than just about anybody in the Western style, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's been very creative for me. It's very distinctive. I'm still challenged. That's the main part about being an artist, is finding your voice in a medium and in an approach that marries the ideas and the processes. So I feel lucky. I've worked to make this happen somewhat steadily, but within this vocabulary way of working, there's so much variety about what I've done. But it also has the common denominator, my weird shapes. I was talking about that last week. The abstractions, my wiggly hand. I can't draw a straight line. So it ends up making these more interesting lines and marks and edges.
But and the shapes, they're to me they echo sort of a mid-century modern kind of vibe. Some of the forms, and but then also I'm seeing, you see some Matisse cutout sort of thing, jazz kinds
Mhm.
of shapes, and but it's all very au courant. Like it doesn't feel old-fashioned, quote
Right.
unquote, at
Good,
all.
good,
And
good.
I wonder, I mean, some of it I think is scale, some of it I think is format, and some of it is your color palette, which is very specific to you, I think.
Hmm. And I think over the years, the color palette has become more sophisticated. Maybe at the beginning, things were more primary colors and bold, and I did use big passages of black. Now I'm not interested in using black. I want to find another way to make that graphic contrast. Black is too easy. It's going to do it no matter what. So I have to find another way through other colors. I ask myself, can I even make yellow dark and act like a dark? Well, not really, but that's just a thing about flipping everything over and trying another way.
Gosh, I mean, this goes back to my idea, my thinking that you have a interesting way of thinking that has pushed all of these things outward. Your overarching framework for thinking is flipping things, binaries.
It could be, and I actually think that's about that relief surface that I'm touching all the time. It's either there or not there, that wood block. And the wood block actually is a sculptural format that I get to consider as my hands go across it and decide what to leave and what to carve. Yes or no, it's there or it's gone. And then how to actually use those dramatic decisions later to make things more subtle, and maybe they're not really all gone. There's a waste area on the other block that I might actually use.
The waste area is one way you can get texture,
Yeah, and I can
right?
get
Yeah.
contradictory things. I was talking about reduction, where things are stacked on top and you can look down through the layers. But sometimes I might use the waste area from the second block, and it crisscrosses and it comes from out of the blue. How does something like that happen? Well, it has to be from another block somewhere. And if I don't carve everything away, there's still wood on that other block that potentially could be used.
So I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
1,000 questions. I think on the pod, we haven't really talked about what additioning looks like when you're using reduction, well, and multi-blocks. Like you must have to map out, well, you tell me.
All right. Well, additioning makes sense for reduction printing because you can never go back once you start. So you have to have the numbers of papers that you want in preparation because they're all going to have to be printed with that first stage. So the first stage could have, for me, colors kind of patched around and it doesn't look very rewarding, but it's interesting and it's there. So I like to do editions of maybe 8 to 14, and I might have 4 artist proof papers with me. So I might be printing 15 or 16 pieces of paper, and they're all going to go through all the stages. I don't do any editing at all. Now, editioning for multiple blocks and a lot of other print processes where the plate is already finished or drawn, they can print all the plates and get a proof that looks close to being finished. And then that steers the editioning in step by step by step. But then they have a more developed look at the finished image. But again, then the editioning process becomes more production, not as creative. When I'm doing my editioning, it's a very creative editioning process because I'm never going to be there again. It's step-by-step constant change to the wood blocks, to the matrices. So those two differences can be challenging for people, and also often students say, why bother doing editioning? But I think that's a really important way to learn and practice what it is you want. You get to study what it is you're after and see all your options. So editioning is more than the monetary side of it, more than the production side. It's really about learning. And for me, that's why I need to make more than one, because I can't make all these decisions with just one. That's too risky, and the proofs help me determine what's the best choices of colors, combinations, cutting, new thoughts that happen while I'm in the midst of proofing, and then I execute that edition right then. No notes, no recording, just edition right then.
So you remember if it's multi-block, you remember the sequence. Well, I guess it's gone step by step by step the whole time anyway, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there improvisation as you go? Is the edition variable?
Sometimes a little bit. The edition, especially the artist proofs, could be sometimes quite different than the edition. And the more I don't know and I keep diving into the edition, my edition gets smaller and I have more artist proofs. They can be very interesting. And later I might say, why didn't I go that route? But in the moment, I went the direction that seemed right. And I'm kind of after that honing it in onto the decisions about what seems to work. And I don't know what they're going to be. So,
right.
Yeah.
I can imagine that the not knowing holds its own interest, but the fact that you can't go back, there must be some like adrenaline that's running through you the whole time saying, there's no going back, keep going.
Yeah. Yes. And I think the happiest place is right in the middle. The beginning is stressful and I get very nervous. I'm going to start something and commit all this expensive paper. And, even if it's only 15 sheets, they're, each $30 or $40. So that's a big investment already. And then towards the end, it becomes exciting, nerve-wracking. What are the last little touches that have to be put in? What is bugging me? That's the question that I ask myself. What bothers me? What needs a little attention? And then comes to a resolution. And then you have, I'm done. It's postpartum depression. So there's a path of creative process. And all that time of making and executing gives a lot of thinking time, a lot of conceptualizing.
Ah, okay. So back up 1 second. What is the time frame between nervous starting and depressing ending?
It might take, if I was kind of working steadily, with normal life going around, it might take a month to do a print. Maybe one run a day, and then the next day I have to go off to meetings or go to do something else or have a workshop or some travel. So it's hard to get constant, steady days where you're working back to back to back. But that allows this conceptualizing time, which I think is good. It incubates, and you don't know what you're going to do next, but it suddenly resolves itself because you think of the idea while you're away from it. Sometimes overnight it happens that.
But you have a plan, you have a drawing.
Yeah, but some things are not.
That's
very
just the
resolved.
framework.
This doesn't tell everything.
Okay. Is there a moment in the last thing that you do ink up and put on the paper? Is that the thing where the whole thing comes together and you're satisfied? Or do you ever go beyond that and you think I should have stopped?
No, I think I do the right thing that has to be done, because that's my quest. Other people might say, oh, she went too far, she's overworked, whatever they want to say. I don't care. For me, there's maybe a lot of ugly works in my repertoire of images all these years, but I actually think I did what needed to be done for me. So
Okay.
I've never abandoned a print. I never threw it away. I resolved them somehow.
Wow. Does the resolution sometimes do you leave them for months or years and come back and do the last thing and it resolves, or do you have to finish?
I kind of like to finish things as they go. Sometimes I work on multiple things at one time, but no, it just bugs you if it's not done. And then later I look at it and it's, wow, I made all those amazing decisions. I don't even remember the struggle.
Initial forms that you've carved in state one, does that ever show up in more than one edition? Like if you're working on more than one thing, do the blocks kind of cross or like maybe flip or something like that?
Not so much. Some of the imagery recurs, but I would rather draw it again and carve it again because something new is going to happen. So the blocks are lying all over the place. They're beautiful, but they don't really get reused unless maybe I'm doing a monoprint series. And then something over there might be something that I could add. But I can't reuse the blocks for another artwork. They've already been carved too much for me. There's too much energy on them. So I have to start again. But I like
It's interesting.
recurring images and to see it translated in another form. Yeah, you can see various flower things being done or the tree form, certainly waves and those kind of motifs recur.
I mean, you could imagine carving a tree form or the helix form or the pod form or whatever, and having those almost like stamps, like in a dictionary of stamps. But you don't do that.
No. Mm-mm.
Wow.
It would be logical, and I always think, oh, that'd be such a good idea. But
well, yes, far be it from me to suggest anything to you about how you work.
who knows? I might give it a try. Oh.
It seems like the scale of things, do they have to be that big, or could you work smaller if you wanted to?
Actually, I work in lots of different formats. It seems like if I'm traveling, sometimes then it's this small thing that can fit in a suitcase. And then here at the studio, now I have lots of space. I can work large again. And if I find good size paper that fits that format, it could be interesting to use these incredible Japanese papers that I might find in Japan or from some of the distributors here in the States. So sometimes the paper determines the format and travel
Right.
and
Right.
time.
Right.
Yeah, I work in all formats, and then even the artist books are quite small formats. And those, I like the challenge of the translation between the big and the little.
So you're the first artist I've talked to that makes books.
Um,
So can you tell us a little bit about that part of your practice?
well, I started making books even in graduate school, and I thought it was really interesting at the time, and a whole kind of craft process that you could learn. It introduced the idea of using letterpress. Even back then, I started using letterpress before there's the the revival that's going on now, the wild revival. Uh, we held on to equipment and type and things before anybody cared. It was really astonishing. Um, so making the books serves as another way. The history that I've been interested in is the history of printmaking, and books are so integral to that. So you have to think of where prints were, how were they used in those book formats, and it's kind of wonderful to have an alternative to the big prints, and then you have these teeny little small things that that are just, they
Oh
feel
gosh.
so good, and you get to touch it, and there's a print inside, and it violates all the rules of art where, yes, I get to touch this and have my hands on the surface of the print, not behind glass. So all along I thought about the book format as an alternative site for where the print can be, and another format change and an expansion of an idea, especially with these accordion fold books that I like to do. So they have a physical presence and they can stand on their own.
The accordion fold book, is that your primary format, or do you do tunnel books or anything weird like that?
No, I mean,
No.
I can play around with all of that here at the studio because I have people who are interested in all these different book formats, and I like to make them, but they're not my serious art pieces. My serious books are mostly accordion. Some I have sewn, but a big book that has to be sewn and bound in the traditional way has too many pages. I don't want to make
Yeah.
that many pages that you have to deal with front and back and pagination and all of that. That's very complicated. So mine are actually often very simple, little fold outs maybe, but they can stand and you can see the front and back, which I'm very used to seeing the back sides of my prints as I'm working. And I love how the ink comes through and you get a kind of a different engagement with the material and the ink. So it's
Sure.
all carried
Depending
in.
on the paper.
Yeah, it's all carried into
Right.
book formats then.
The books also carry text. Is that your writing?
Not often. I don't consider myself a poet or a writer, but sometimes I use strings of words that I'm thinking of, and a little bit of a word could expand the meaning and the understanding of what opposites that I'm trying to show. I can't even think of the opposites of some of those word phrases, but I often make a search for a specific text that would go with something that I've started, or sometimes I have a text that's so wonderful I have to do something with it. So
Ah,
it can be initiated by the text, or else my image initiates a search. And then I find a text that some have been by living poets and friends, some have been long dead poets. People have written things for me in response to my prints. So all of that is a very interesting kind of intertwined process.
you're doing the typesetting and the letterpress printing, I assume.
Mhm. I may not be the greatest in the world, but I do like to do it.
So my question has always been, and I'm so glad I get to ask you, somebody with the answer. What do you do first? The images or the letterpress?
For years, I would do the letterpress first because you can print a lot of those once you get going and it's set up. But to blow a woodcut finished on a bad impression on the letterpress, whoa,
Oh, oh,
dangerous.
Of
But
course.
then printing the woodcuts with the text already printed can smash the beautiful embossment. So there's a drawback with some of that.
So with letterpress, I mean, I know everybody's heavily embossing everything now, but I mean, in history, the embossment was not desired, right?
Right, just the kiss, a kiss, just
Yeah.
the right amount of pressure is what you're supposed to have. And I try to always do that. But I do like a little bit of that embossing. And actually, the wood blocks themselves do embossment too, but not very
Right.
much.
Sure.
And it doesn't squeeze it down too much. I'm not interested in printing from the low areas. But print a lot of the letterpress when it's set up. You can do that quickly.
Oh, that's good. The emboss, I think my theory is, I think people like the embossment now because it just distinguishes it as handmade
I think you're right. I think
ish.
it adds that physical dimension that all this digital world, photo world, commercial printing world, we don't have. So people are kind of missing that in their lives, and we have to show them that this is important to have this physical interaction.
Right. Yeah, we're in that craftsman, when William Morris brought craft back because of the Industrial Revolution or whatever, we're in the same parallel moment. Like, we
Right.
want handmade things.
Yes.
So when did you get your studio together? It looks like you renovated maybe 5 years ago or something, a cool building.
10 years ago now.
Oh, gosh.
We had our 10th year anniversary in the middle of January. I can't believe it. It's gone so fast. But yes, I bought an old storefront, had it gutted, and did the renovations to the space. It has a big gallery, open space, and then the press room just comes right off of that with the etching presses and the letter presses up here. Downstairs, I have a bookmaking studio, paper making studio, and my type equipment is down there. So I can set type downstairs and bring it up here, print on the Vandercooks. But
You're covering a lot of territory.
Yes, yes. And in a way, I think of it all as intertwined. And that's the metaphor of Constellation Studios. All these different parts are certainly my own interests, but they're also the interrelated parts of print. What do you print on is the question. And I can't make enough paper to satisfy what I need for printing, but I can do it for dabbling, and I can do it for some of the artist's books, and handmade paper is really fun to do. And then I can decorate it, and then I can put it in another form, and does it go as a book or does it turn into a print? It's all part of that same question that comes out of printmaking history.
Did you, when you were in school, I always love to ask people this because, we do a bit of history of prints on the pod.
Yeah.
Did you have a class in undergrad or grad school on history of print?
I wish I had. Now, one of my colleagues taught the history of print, basically from the Middle Ages to Albrecht Dürer. But then I've followed and understood in my own non-historical way the continuing history of prints and printmakers and the artist specialists who are printmakers and the publishing houses that make prints and all the intersections of that complex, and I usually say checkered history of the print, good and bad.
Yeah, I worry about the ecosystem, as you know. We haven't really talked about the ideas in the work, so we probably should circle back to that, right?
It's always still hard for me to talk about the work, even though...
Why?
Because it's so expansive, and it starts with a little kernel. And then I joked about this the other day, this little kernel, and suddenly while I'm making this print, it's reminding me of the Sistine Chapel. And it's, oh my God. Not that that's really what I'm trying to make a correlation to, but the tension between those fingers happens if I put two shapes together, and the same kind of tension happens. But anyway, that's not really about the content of the work. So I'm very much interested in nature. I'm immersed in nature. living in Nebraska, it's very close. You can get right there. I lived out in the country for 35 years, and now I live in Lincoln. So I was commuting and I saw the landscape all the time. It certainly has impressed in me. And so is it landscape issues, good and beautiful, but also all the way to destructive and changes. So it's about those questions of how did this happen? How did the mountains get raised? How did they wash away? And it begins with looking at a miniature Grand Canyon that you see in a ravine in Nebraska, and you see it from the airplanes, and then you see the real amazing things that happen in the world that have been shaped and weathered through time. So in my small way, I'm talking about those evolutionary changes and the strange forms, the decisions that we're making. So it's always had an ecological consciousness in the work, but done in a beautiful way. So it's not dogmatic, and it's subtle, and it's meant to draw the viewer in and kind of follow along and question, why is that there? What is that doing? So I'm really trying to pose questions about this natural environment that we're in and what we're doing.
Right. It's wide open, Karen.
I know.
It's a lot of cover.
Yeah, is that too open? So I do think of, this macroscopic view of some environmental thing. Is this a plant that is an invasive? Is it a space that's a reservoir where things are held in safety and against emptiness of loss? So often it's these contrasts between what could be, what has happened in my questioning ideas.
This goes back to your binary opposites framework.
Yeah, and I don't want to be so black and white on all of these things. And actually, maybe that's why I say the marriage between the process and the ideas are so good about transitional spaces, things that aren't set perfectly in stone and they have ambiguity about them. That can be done in the process, in the colors that I'm using. And then the process has meaning to this big idea of how did things happen this way.
Wow. When you started doing the work that included nature as its overarching theme, did it take you a long time to figure out what you were doing? I mean, conceptually, like a lot of artists say, it took me 15 years to figure out what I was trying to say.
Well, probably because you can tell I don't have an easy one sentence answer unless it's the elevator speech of nature-based lyrical abstraction.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, and that's actually says it all. They're beautiful, strange. It's abstract. It's exaggerations of the landscapes and the colors that I've seen. Purple. Where does all the purple come from? Or the blue? Well, it's here, but exaggerated. I was talking about in the making having days and days while you're working, but you're looking at it constantly, and all those ideas are flowing through. And I'm listening to the radio, and a radio news story comes on, and it's like, oh my God, they just discovered this in outer space and black holes, and I'm doing something with the big explosion. So am I really talking about how things have evolved over eons, or the most recent wars and all the bombs happening over there? And, those things kind of become embedded into the thoughts. Why I can say it goes all the way to the Sistine Chapel.
I can definitely see architectural plans sometimes in some of the patterns, and definitely the aerial view of battlefields. I mean, like, it's all there for sure. You can go so many different ways with it.
Yeah. But somehow it all looks like mine. So that's a mystery that I was trying to explain to a student the other day too. I think that comes out of the body, and I make marks a certain way. I carve a certain way. It's just natural that we have an angle to how things go. Or I was describing this wiggly line I made. I think I cultivated that over many years, and it ends up making edges that I have to have. So, yeah, it's from a long time ago. It's from accident. It's from the body. It's from drawing. It's from carving on wood, and the wood fights with me. And then it makes something that's a third thing that's even better than what I could plan. It's better. Yeah.
Wow. Oh my God. Your brain doesn't stop, does it?
Probably not.
I mean, I feel like you're like a super deeply curious person.
That's good. Yeah. And now that I'm retired, I can go to the library and pick up all these books from all these strange directions and just let myself flow. And all these, reading is, now I can do it for enjoyment.
Yeah, right. Oh my gosh. Look forward to that day. Somehow I'm having this flashback to an artist that I studied, Hayter. Everybody, we're back to Hayter. But
Yes.
he was a proponent of automatic drawing in the surrealist manner. And he would, draw, and he would, make the stacks of the various kinds of images and the tallest stack would win, basically.
Yeah.
And I feel like there could have been a moment when your vocabulary was coming through in that kind of a way. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think so. I was going to show you my thumbnail sketches. Oh, there's the one. There are scribbles.
Okay.
They're scribbles. And sometimes when I have to generate a new idea, I have to scribble and get my hand going. And then, I think I'm a failure. Nothing is good. Oh, here's an ugly sketch. But then it grows on and it grows on. And then pretty soon it's pretty interesting. And I have to treat it like an exercise to make myself sit and do that.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Hayter was onto something. When I doodle, I always doodle the same forms. They always come out the same way. And I feel, it's like your signature. It's just you. It's all you.
Right. Yeah. Sometimes the best doodles are when you're talking on the phone and you're kind of in an automatic process. And then I look at those and, oh my gosh, there's something interesting. And then I have to include it into these study sketches. And also I have to make lots of ugly ones. And then suddenly something really is interesting there. And I can draw it over and over and over again. And then it evolves. And then I pick something in this that I don't know how I'm going to do. And then, that's the print I have to make. The hard one.
You like challenges.
Mm-hmm.
If it was easy, you would be uninterested.
Right. How am I going to keep growing? That's my personal challenge. That's what I think art has to be, is a way to grow. Artists have to grow. Even
after a long career where you've been successful, there's no rest for that.
No. No, and even learning how to make the art while busy life is going on and other interests. That's the life challenge. It's good.
So at Constellation, I know obviously you are using the equipment, but are you doing classes, and is it a community workshop of a sort?
Yes, my intention is to have local artists join as members, and then they use the equipment. They have access to the studio. Often they might want to take a workshop first and get familiar. And so I teach workshops here. I have one member who teaches workshops, but I'm free. I don't have to pay myself, so I can teach the workshops. And I like to do that too. It's my alternative way of teaching. So I have people coming for artist residencies as well. And so they come for a week or 2 weeks or a month. And I don't do a whole lot of advertising and deadline approaching because I'm not with any staff. It's all just me. So I have to keep it at a level that I can manage. But all this ability to host people here in the studio is meant to contribute to the community. I've seen that model in places all over the world, and I needed to make it in Lincoln because nobody has done it yet. So I
Ah.
have all this equipment. I want it to stay together and be used and to last for a long time.
And then you also have a gallery space. Who's the curator? I can guess who's the curator.
Pretty much me. But sometimes projects come up. Somebody else proposes a project, or I see something and it triggers an idea, and I invite artists. I like being able to make things happen for other people. So this gives me that venue to do that. I have a wonderful print collection that's wonderful to me, but I can draw from that and make exhibitions. You know, it's not going to be famous. There's no Picassos in my collection. It's friends and things I've traded for and former students. And yes, things I've even bought. And some of that is wonderful to get out and show. So it augments what I can do in the studio, and it relates sometimes to the workshops, or I can generate a community project where participants join in.
And then with the residencies, it won't be me because I'm not an artist, but if I were coming to stay for 2 weeks or whatever, would you be acting as my collaborative printer, or am I just there using the equipment?
I've done both. Mostly
Okay.
people come to do their own work, but I can coach them along and introduce them to something they haven't done, or if a workshop is going to happen while they're here, they can just join in with that. I have served as a master printer for only a few artists and a few community projects that we've done with printing big black and white wood blocks that get wheat pasted around town. We've done that twice, and we're going to get ready to do it again here this spring. So that's fun. I don't mind being a master printer, but I tried to generate some projects and be the publisher and then market the prints, but I'm not a good marketer. So that's another facet that has to happen with all this, but it's inherent in making prints. If you make prints and you have more than one, you have to do something with them and get them out.
That's right. It looks like on your website that you are available to not you, your work is available to purchase in more than several galleries. It's quite a list. So you are findable.
Yes, I've always had galleries who've represented me around the country. I've been very lucky that way. But the whole gallery scene, as you know, is shifting and changing, and people are retiring, or the interest is different now. So it's a hit or miss thing, but having representatives somewhere else has been good. I'm trying to be the representative here of my work, so people can contact me.
Right. Okay. So they should follow you and be in touch because you have fabulous work, and it comes in multiple formats and sizes. Like there's something for everybody.
And someday I would really like to do some of those print fairs, like one in Baltimore. You're the one organizing that too. Yeah, that sounds intriguing. It looks like it was a success.
Yeah, we've done 2 of them. Yeah, no, super fun. I was dancing around the entire weekend saying to people, "It's my prom."
Good job.
Yeah,
Important.
thanks. Yeah, I mean, there's, it's, I have a hard time believing that the ecosystem can survive on internet sales. Just doesn't seem like it's going to work. And I totally believe in the tactility of the works and that people need to see them in person and, all that stuff. So fairs are kind of the way to do it, I think.
Yeah, I think that's what's happening now, and that has impacted the galleries and then the online stuff. That might work for the younger people, but someday maybe. But at this point, people need to see the real things, and I'm probably the best one to explain the work, even though it's complicated.
Well, and also as you said earlier, the books, like it's a personal experience. You interact with it, you hold it, it's very intimate. And, I suppose you could buy a book online, but they come to life in your hands. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, Karen, Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to mention before we sign off, or have we covered most everything?
I think we covered quite a bit. So,
Yeah, I
is it
think so.
interesting to you? Did this answer the things you've always wondered? You knew my work.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, for sure. No, I was confused about the process, and so I'm glad we talked that through, even though it went on for probably longer than most people. I was
well,
like, what?
all the printmakers always want to know how I do it.
Exactly.
And even, the collectors, everybody, because it's kind of mysterious, but I also want to keep turning it into this thing that the process leads into this same idea of change and transition.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you're absolutely right. Your methodology is about changing the tradition of woodcut and everything. Like, you're so boundary pushing. It's fantastic.
Good.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on Platemark today. It was delightful talking to you.
Yes, this was great. Thank you so much for your interest and good questions.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Platemark with Karen Kunc. She's a delight, and I enjoyed talking to her thoroughly. Thank you to her for being a wonderful guest. Also, my thank yous, as usual, go out to Dan Fury of Extension Audio. Thank you for all your help. And to Michael Diamond for the use of his original music. And also to Lee Turner and Skip Barnhart for their studio soundscapes. Super appreciate it. If you value the content that we're producing over here at Platemark, it's just me, please consider going over to platemarkpodcast.com and hitting the support and donate button. Your help would be most appreciated. It's just, as I said, just me. Images that we talk about will be over on the show notes at platemarkpodcast.com. You can find them there. And I think that's it. Okay, we'll see you next time.